Wasn't going to make a video today. The plan was to be in bed, recovering from this. My throat's in bits, so apologies to those that were expecting the watch along last night. My throat would never have survived. But I reckon it can survive 10 minutes or so. That's the plan, to whinge again following another football match. I was whinging about the referee against Newcastle, and albeit that I don't think we deserved to beat Newcastle, I think we deserved a point, and I don't think we played that badly. This is a completely different story we're talking about here. This is a top to bottom disaster class from Manchester City. Isolated for that game. I'm not talking about a long-term disaster class, but that's the problem now, is you've got 2 back-to-back defeats now, and now the pressure's on the better players, the A team, seemingly. That's what it seems like now, because Pep put out the B team. What was Pep Guardiola doing? You know me. If you've watched this channel for long enough, you know me and Pep Guardiola. Like, I will defend him to the hill. You know, I will plant that flag firmly in the ground and have Pep Guardiola's face flapping about on the flag, because I am the biggest fan of Pep Guardiola ever. I love the man. I've never been as angry as I was last night, considering this selection. Now, obviously, you didn't see me in the watch long, but if I had made a watch long, you'd have seen me incredibly concerned before the game, because I've never known Pep to rotate. That I looked at the 11, I was like, have I got the day wrong? Is this Champions League now? Or is it Carabao Cup night? And we've drawn some minnow that are in League 2. You know, have I got it right? Is this the Champions League night? You know, because the disrespect he showed to Bayer Leverkusen, I couldn't believe Pep did that. Now, I've heard some people say, well, they were forced selections. He has to rotate, because I heard a lot of City fans, excuse me, before the game, talking about he's got to rest. He's got to rest, and there's key players that we do not want to risk getting injured. Pep went with that, okay? But I feel like he's been scarred by last season's injuries. Last season, we were injury prone, and we picked up quite a few. You know, Rodri being the big one, amongst others over the course of the season, De Bruyne and others as well. That was a massive hindrance to the season. But it was only in 2017 when he was saying this.
We are tired, fuck you. We are tired, fuck you. You are not tired, guys, you want to be champions.
So what's happened? Why is he so aggressive and so demanding of his players back then, to then think it's okay to rotate pretty much the whole starting 11, barring a few, for Bayer Leverkusen, who are third in the Bundesliga, by the way. They're a bloody good side, you know. I don't know why he thought this was going to be as easy as his starting 11 suggested he thought it was going to be, you know. And the individuals in that performance, we need to talk about that. So I want to make it abundantly clear that Pep Guardiola got it categorically wrong. Now, thankfully, he came out and immediately held his hands up and said, I take full responsibility for this, in his post-match interview. Good to see that there was, and as always, Pep Guardiola protects his players, and he spoke about how he loves his players still. Great. But I actually think that there's a positive that comes out of this for me. Because surely, Pep's an incredibly intelligent man. So that's one thing that's a positive in this situation. This he surely will have learned, don't do that again. Don't play those players again. Certainly not all of them at the same time. Maybe sprinkle a few in here and there, but there's no way you're playing that 11 against any opposition in the Premier League or in the Champions League ever again. Not this season anyway. You know, not when there is, because that's what that stood out to me was they aren't kids, but it felt like we were playing the kids. There were so many experienced players playing yesterday. Because Reinder's in the mid-20s, Marmoush is in his mid-20s, Gonzalez as well. But those 3 players I just named are pretty new. Reinders is fresh this season. Marmoush only joined in January with Gonzalez, so there was a lack of experience of Manchester City. You know, there's a footballing experience in those 3 players I just named, but there was also the element of Savinho's been around here for long enough, but still seems like a kid. He plays like one. Plays like a kid. Bob as well. He got the leg break, so I think he's had a year sort of written out of his career so far, which is unfortunate, but he too was shockingly bad. We'll be talking about Savinho in a minute, because, I don't know how Savinho managed to stand out in such a bad performance when every player was pretty much below 6 out of 10. And I won't be doing player ratings today for those who are expecting numbers associated with these players. I ain't got time, unfortunately. I've got to look after my girl as well today, my little girl, while feeling like this. So I've had to cut this one short, unfortunately, plus I'm not feeling great. But the idea of individual analysis is, I'm still going to try and provide you that, starting at the back with James Trafford. I didn't fill me with confidence. He didn't fill me with confidence. I'm not sure he should be being blamed for the second goal because it was an outstretch. Part of me thinks, yeah, maybe Donnarumma could have got his fingertips to that, maybe. But that's hindsight. But the moment he comes running out of his goal like that and causes chaos, like, what is he doing there? It doesn't fill me with confidence. And I mean, why should he have confidence? Because he's joined Manchester City and then we went and signed Donnarumma. So I don't really blame the guy for lacking confidence because he's clearly been brought in as a number 2 when he probably thought he was going to be number 1. So I feel for him in that regard. But the performance from him wasn't a standout performance, but there was that moment. I think they all had moments. That's the key. Even the players that came on, the likes of Haaland, who missed a one-on-one. Foden was falling all over the place with a poor touch. The team looked better when they came on, don't get me wrong, when O'Reilly, Doku and Foden all came on. Haaland added to the scene late into that midway into that second half. I think we improved once those players came onto the pitch. But I couldn't believe how everyone had a real stinking moment in that game, but yet Savinho managed to be consistently poor. There wasn't just one moment here and one moment there from Savinho. The entire 90 minutes, everything he did was bad. I can't think of anything positive that he did. I think he got to the byline once and his cross was overhit. I can't think of any other moment where it was like, you're actually delivering something there. I mean, dribbling down the right wing he slipped at one point, and I mean, a slip is a slip, but I've never seen anything like it not in recent times. You know, from this crop of Manchester City players, going all the way back to the previous crops of Manchester City players, this is baffling to me that Pep Guardiola still sticks with him. What's even more baffling is how we were given £75 million offer from Spurs that we rejected for Savinho. I'm concerned that the club have this plan, this grandmaster plan for Savinho to be a CFG, like flagship, not just a CFG money-making player, a player that's worked his way up through a sister club and then ended up at the flagship club that is Manchester City, of all of the CFG group and all the sister clubs and all the clubs owned by CFG. Working your way through the ranks of them to get to Manchester City and showcasing to other players that you can also sign for one of the sister clubs and eventually make it into the first team of the starting 11. He ain't good enough for this Manchester City football club right now. He's nowhere near at it. I've seen glimpses, very small glimpses, and those glimpses are getting wider and wider and further apart from one another. The gaps in between moments of quality is getting bigger. And he's getting more time on the pitch. He keeps getting rewarded for what? And his contract. And I hate throwing one player under the bus, but there's no ignoring what Savinho did yesterday. Because he stood out in a shower of shit yesterday. Everyone was poor. They were all poor yesterday, but somehow he still managed to be poorer than the rest of them. I couldn't believe it. You know, Ake with the goal, coming on, an experienced head. He's one of the few that has experience as a footballer and experience at the club, understanding the circumstances. The defending for that cross when it came in, just caught on his heels, just waiting for it, so passive. That ball's coming, fucking attack it, mate. Throw yourself at it. Why are you waiting for the ball, man? You're a centre-back. Challenge the fucking thing. Couldn't believe it yesterday. And I maintain that the players that came on, albeit they look better, fine, but I still feel like there's one positive in all of this that we can take forward now. The two, really, is Pep has learned from this that the squad ain't all that. You look at Arsenal when they rotate, for example, they don't feel like there's kids on the pitch when their second string of players come on and they rotate necessarily. No, and when they do rotate, they get the job done. You know, whereas we rotate a whole host of players and we look way off it. I think that's point one. But the good news is that therefore puts the other 11 players that were rested in better limelight. I think that makes them probably there's a negative also associated with it. The positive is that they are clearly the best players. They won't have lost form or confidence from that, because they were put in a difficult situation, being thrown onto the pitch, or half of them were thrown onto the pitch to try and rectify a situation. When you're 1-0 down, pressure's on, what do you expect from them? You've done this to yourself, Pep, from the team selection, unfortunately. The negative is they now have the pressure on their heads to make sure it doesn't become 3 losses in a row. And it's Leeds at home at the weekend. You know the 11. You know which he's going to play. He's going to go back to the Newcastle 11, there or thereabouts. Maybe 1 or 2 rotated, depending on the circumstances. Ultimately, I think that's going to be pretty much the same 11 we saw against Newcastle. I fully expect them to go and beat Leeds. Pressure's on them, though. Pressure's on them now, because they've now got to carry that weight of, we can't allow it to become 3 losses in a row. Before you know it, we're looking at a spell like last season, potentially, where we've got this horrible feeling of loss after loss, and we're back in the mud again. You know? Got to rectify it. That Newcastle performance, I don't think was anywhere near as bad as some people make out. That last night, though, was a real fucking stinker. That was shite, that was last night. Proper shit. Leeds, you fix it. That's all that's needed, and we forget about that, and we go and do the business in the Premier League, and we progress in the Champions League, and we forget about this night, because it was an absolute shocker for Manchester City. It really was. Let me know your thoughts. Like and subscribe to Typical City, and I'll see you in the next one.
This is Typical City now, holding up silverware.